who are going to hopefully follow up, I think, what was a really inspiring keynote and give you some more ideas in terms of how to take these things forward.
It was a really good keynote, wasn't it? For some reason the camera is facing you, not me, so don't pick your nose. And unfortunately Sean couldn't actually be here today, but Louise is here, which is really good. So, this worked earlier. Never mind. So today we'll be talking about something called the concept canvas, and it's essentially a very, very simplified business model. And the reason that we use it a lot and we really like it is that it's so simple, it's very easy to teach, and it's very versatile in terms of how you use it. So over the course of this session, I'll be telling you a bit more about who we are and what we do. I'll explain the concept canvas, which you might have noticed there's a few around the walls. And then I'll give you an opportunity to actually use it. And if you enjoy using it, or you think you might want to direct students to it, or you want to revisit it again after today, I'll give you some next steps for that. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Enterprise and Startup team, we're part of Careers and Employability, and we're a central student service, and we're here for all students. We are here to support all students with developing their enterprising skills. We also have a package of support available for students who want to start their own businesses or who are interested in exploring self-employment in any form. But we are here for all students to support enterprising behaviours and skills. And the simplest way that we describe what we do is that we're here to help students bring their ideas to life. And to flesh that out a bit more, like many of you, we have a QAA guiding document around enterprise and entrepreneurship. And I'm not going to read this quote to you, I'll let you scan it while I'm speaking, but the gist of this quote and the gist of the whole document, which is a really lovely document that we actually have in constant use in our team, is that enterprise educators and entrepreneurship educators support people with bringing ideas to life. And that bringing of ideas to life is really the tip of an iceberg beneath which there's a lot of underpinning skills, behaviours, attitudes and attributes that can be learned around spotting opportunities, creative problem solving, collaboration, acting on ideas, and delivering them successfully within practical constraints. And the reason that we chose to propose running the concept canvas session for you today is that it's a really easy and gentle way to introduce students to business models. Depending on what school and discipline you come from, you might find that some students are really reluctant or resistant to topics around business and entrepreneurship. Those words can really turn some people off. So the fact that this is such an easy, simple tool to learn and use, we find very effective. And by having introduced students to simple business models, they are then able to go on and evaluate and visualize their ideas, implement ideas within practical constraints, and they can also better articulate business operations, which can help them stand out in quite a competitive graduate market. So what is the concept canvas? It's been created by a local Cardiff company called Simply Do Ideas. I'm not sure if any show of hands if you've heard of them before. Okay, just a couple. So it's not the only tool out there for visualizing business models, but it is probably the simplest that we've come across, and for that reason we find it really versatile. It consists of 6 segments or 6 building blocks, all of which start with a C, which makes it a little easier to memorize. And I'll explain what those are now. So at the heart of it is the concept. So what is the idea? For us, in a lot of what we do, it's a business idea, but it's not limited to business ideas. Following which there's customers. So who would actually want to engage with that idea, that concept, and realistically, who would pay for it? Competitors, hopefully quite self-explanatory. Who else is competing for those customers' attention? The contents refers to the resource that you would need to make that idea a reality, to bring it to life. The compatibility section actually is a short skills audit that we ask students to undertake to reflect on what skills they would need to bring that idea to life. And what we're not doing is insisting that students definitely have all the skills they need. It's about reflecting on what they do have and what they don't have, and encouraging them to think about where they could be building partnerships or growing their team. And finally, cash refers to the sort of financial side of how the idea is brought to life and how it becomes profitable and sustainable. So I'll just open up something to show you quickly. I always hold my breath when people do this during presentations in case it's not where I left it. So I mentioned that we already use the concept canvas in a few different situations. So it's available digitally on the Simply Do Ideas platform. So at the moment, one of the main ways we use it is that if a student comes to us with a business idea, we ask them to create an account which is free to them, and they can then work through the 6 C's online in their own time and populate the bare bones of what they think their business idea is. And for many students, that's the first time that they've gone from having an idea in their head to actually articulating it in some way. So this is a mocked up example of what a student would do online, which is working through those 6 C's. And for us, we find this a really effective way of supporting potential student entrepreneurs with their ideas. So you can see here there's a self-evaluation. It doesn't need to be 10s across the board. So that's one example. Other examples are that we've used the concept canvas in curriculum. So academics have invited us into their lectures to run the session. What we've done with chemistry, and we've also done the same thing with engineering, is that we have an hour with students, we quickly explain the concept canvas, and then we give them a concept or a business idea which is relevant to their discipline and industry. So it's tailored to them, but then they then have to have a work together in groups to populate those segments of the concept canvas and then pitch it back to the room afterwards. Another way that we've used it is an extracurricular event that we run annually in archaeology, history and religion, or those 3 things in a different order, which is where we give the students a challenge over the course of 2.5 hours, where we already populate the concept canvas completely, explaining the business operations of a museum, but the museum is unprofitable, and students then in teams have to spend 2.5 hours creating a whole new one that would make the museum actually sustainable. And we also have, there's some of my colleagues are delivering a story about this later today. So if you're going to one of the breakout sessions with the stories and picture pictures this afternoon, someone's going to tell you a bit more about how that works. So, does anybody have any questions before I move on? Yes?
Can I just ask, with the students when they're using the concept canvas online, populating it for their business idea, how does that affect IP in terms of putting your idea out?
Their IP is protected.
It's still protected even though
It's only visible to staff, and we are under.
GDPR.
Yes, that's correct. That thing.
I thought it was the oath.
Yeah, we just want to know.
Yeah.
And it's only visible to to staff within our team.
Has it been used in assessment so far?
I don't think it has, but I think it could be. Which is partly why I'm mentioning it today. So, what I really wanted to do, rather than just tell you about it, was get you using it. So, you're already in tables, and there's already 4 concept canvas dotted around the room. I realise they're slightly clustered in this side, but you're just going to have to elbow each other a bit. And what I'm going to do is, I won't ask you to come up with a concept all on your own. We're going to give you a business idea. I'm not saying it's the best one in the world, but it will be a business idea. And I'm also not going to ask you to complete the compatibility section where you evaluate yourself, because I think that might be tricky in a larger team. But over the next 20 minutes, what I'll ask you to do in groups is use the post-its and pens on your table and respond to the concept that you're given in order to populate one of these concept canvases. Does that sound all right?
Yeah.
You're a really quiet group.
Yes.
Yes.
Just use a little bit
similar to the SWOT analysis.
Yeah.
We do use that in integrated medical education,
Yeah.
integrated BSc for them to develop their projects, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Mm.
I haven't heard of the 6 Cs, but we do use that as part of scaffolding them to think about their project and what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think SWOT and PESTLE are really good tools as well. I think from our point of view, because this one has a slightly more business slant to it for the students who do progress to trying to start their own venture, we can build on what they provide. But yeah, it's as I did mention, it's definitely not the only tool, and we do as a team use lots of other tools across the university. We also use the business model canvas. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that. I really like the business model canvas, but it's slightly more in depth, and because of that, it's more of a challenge to get through in an hour if that's all you've got with students. Any other questions? Brilliant. Okay, so I will randomly allocate business ideas to each table. And if you probably need to introduce yourselves quickly to each other, pick which poster on the wall that you'll be. Okay, good. And of course, I'm here, Louise is here. We'll be roaming around the room if you have any questions.
So we'll just go around the table and why they are interested in this. So I'm Carl, I'm from the School of Medicine, and I teach UC medical pharmacology. So I want to have something that will apply to them as long as it's interesting research.
I guess in lecture, which is a little bit different. They actually pay to do what we do because the business is healthier. But yeah, really interesting to develop.
These come from you, or were they related to anything like?
No, I made them up yesterday. We do have a few lists where it's subject specific, like chemistry and geography. But for this, we thought, well, we could give them something serious, or we could give them something silly. Just went for silly.
I don't know. I've seen worse ideas. Dragon's Den is what I want.
True.
Let's assume what the idea is
So our customers curfew. It's not gender specific, is it? So it's why would you want to
Discuss. I mean,
even museums.
I suppose it's going to be dependent.
That's it. You've got to get it. It is their members. Like outside meditation.
Like once you've got the you've got to slip that to launch, don't you? Yeah.
He doesn't like the
we should have braille.
Yes, yes. You need to sign on.
Yeah.
If people want to try something else, or with adventures, okay, just
Would you be able to try it? You could probably stick on a leg.
No, you've got the concept.
Yeah.
Try to mix them in. Yeah.
It might be that you can just do the Yeah, and then it just like launches. Yeah, you have to have
so like
way.
the closer actually don't do well. So
Could that just be like the front?
Would be under your
So really, we need to design the concept, because it isn't a full concept, is it? So we need to do it.
There's another bit that goes on the
Yeah, so then we can say
being small is actually
the customers, I think most people who buy online, they're too busy to go to the shops.
Because on the top, on the car map, you specialise display different types of meditation.
A gift as well, and then
It's
it's
really about
or gentlemen, like that's very overview. Anyone know?
It's like different focus in it. You feel there's more out there.
Sorry?
Rather than really buying free gift, people individually pay it. You get for example, you buy a little sample, which like,
But you don't really get it.
would be
So if someone says,
Well, I was thinking in that, because you can really get this as a
and actually, they're not, there's no fun, but actually, it's
No, but you can go around with
yeah,
just
I'm seeing more on a marketing thing. I'm just going to make a call from it on my
That
phone.
you do.
you can't get They could be like every 6 months, so it's really, so it's not just a case of making but we can do contact.
So what do you want it to be?
Yeah, I think it's, the fact that they like the most of the
and then you talk about how you try to
Unfortunately, we usually got like 30 or 50 or
Financial services.
sample fine. Sample fine.
That was the average. Actually have boxes of 20 mil, so like 2 boxes of 20 mil each different one, so that was 120 mil. So you have to think, about the amount to be working with, not how much you use it. But we don't have it for maintenance, that we use it one day, want to finish it, so we have it so you have enough. How long is 20 mil last?
And where you're putting it.
I think you can be festivals, and then you go to push as well. Like for 20 mil, of course you can charge. I'd say this cost transport cost is the same as for 20 mil.
I think we've got the straight deal for us to get promising that way. If you want to try
If you have a really big audience,
They would probably initially just it would be tied down to what they would supply.
There's going to be
Yeah. So in their interest.
you get them in like 5
How's it going to make money? How is this idea made?
Don't forget to see what you posted up at some point.
Are we giving them just one sentiment?
We've got a business plan. We're going to be going to
Okay. I'll give you 5 more minutes for chatting, and then certainly at least one team I'm going to ask maybe to share what you've discussed, because it sounds like a wonderful business.
So so we need contacts with
we need to be able to get samples that you can't.
That's when you need market analysis.
so we put that go into content.
And then we can go in
One of my
budget, but they want more expensive.
For a donation.
You can get a bit of a bar.
Yeah, you could do like a budget, you could do like a budget version and then
And the label them one and two, and then say
They are
something
quite
bigger, and then they go online and look for one eventually.
True, that could be another.
Is it going to be for the?
How big?
And then don't tell which one is it, but they'll be able to tell.
Things that you need to do to make the
so market analysis, context manufacturers.
Yeah, like you can design,
I'm loving this team.
You can get phone box average condition focus on, but that's just the
Did you explore all these?
So this one's bigger.
Everyone, I think we've got about 1 minute to go, so if you want to start just shoving your post-its up on the wall, that'd be wonderful.
So,
something else that just something that gets addictive and then buy it.
How can you get money? You don't get cash, you can go into the bank, you can do crowdfunding, ideas.
Well, I don't make profit from I think the profit is made through marketing, manufacturers. I don't think we really make that already for the customers. The income and we can sell our customers and make them to the yes, we're actually a market research company to start. But we get them to take something to say they're happy for us to share their information.
Everybody, whenever I raise my voice, you look at me. For the sake of timekeeping, I will stop you there. But it would be wonderful if any team would be willing to share what their idea is. I'm particularly looking at these guys because I think it's a goer.
So we have a really great business idea, and we hope you'll get on board. And it's regarding turning old phone boxes into meditation booths. So our idea was to essentially get old phone boxes from the council, and hopefully for free because they've got disused ones or decommissioned ones. And then we'll take the phone boxes. We were talking about the interior of them, but I think that's maybe a step too far for today. And then we're going to transport them to different companies, get the companies to pay us for a phone box, make it nice and calming, and maybe padded, maybe a hammock, we're uncertain, inside the phone box, and have them as thinking meditation spaces that are linked to like a mindfulness app or the Mind app, so that especially big London businesses that are worried about wellness and well-being, they can buy something that allows them to show that they're looking after their staff. So if staff having a bad day, they can take a bit of time out in the phone booth. And then from a financial side of things, we were thinking we would maybe have one phone box as an advertising phone box. And then companies could order a phone box from us and we could potentially do it to their specification, put quite a high premium on additional features to make money before we then have to give them the phone box. We're not doing giving them a lot of money in the first place. And then advertising, how are we doing that? Was that through apps? I can't remember.
Partly,
Yeah, we also mentioned about going to Scotland into festivals and other areas where you have large crowds, and maybe having travelling phone boxes to go to the countryside.
So they're portable phone boxes. And then potentially thought once the business was up and running, maybe going out, diversifying into areas where people have higher issues with mental health, like farming and farmers, and areas with like doctors and anaesthetists, and areas where people potentially have particularly fragile mental health. And ideally we were going to turn it into a charitable organisation once all the costs were covered and it was running, to make all the profit go back to a mental health charity.
So we quit our job.
Yeah,
we're
we want 5 million for 1% share.
And the phone boxes, we looked on eBay and they're only about £3,500 a phone box. So it's not the biggest initial outlay.
Wow. Incidentally, any sort of business that's built around a community or social good is called, you can have a social enterprise as opposed to a charity. So it's still a sustainable business with something good at its heart. I think my last few slides are reasonably quick, so we could hear from one other group if you wanted to. Anyone feeling really good about their ideas? Or actually, if you're not, you can throw some more questions out if you prefer.
I'd like to hear what the other group's task were. Our group task was Perfume of the Month mail subscription, and I thought it was a really good concept, and we had a lot of fun, I think, thinking about loads of things we could do. We didn't have a final idea yet what we're going to do, but it's just exploring all these different aspects, and like, are we going to market to these people, what are we going to do? And I think that's what
I think what's interesting is actually none of us would buy into our to be a customer of what we were given. So then that makes you think differently about how you could make it suitable to you. Whereas I presume most of the students that are coming to you, they're quite passionate about their idea, so they feel they've got all the answers, but then they have to challenge themselves to think about why it wouldn't be suitable for certain groups of people and how they could make it that way.
That's a really common challenge that we have with students, is that they always come up with ideas for students, and getting them to think about other groups and understand other customer segments is, once they get there, it's really empowering for them to think, oh wow, I don't have to aim things at my peers. Wonderful. So I realise we've got to run through things quickly. If you're interested in using this beyond today, as I mentioned, we pay a license for Simply Do Ideas platform. So we welcome more staff to use it. I'd recommend contacting the enterprise team and seeing how it works, because what we've done with our startup support is that students start with the concept canvas, but they move on to more complicated segments that we build ourselves. So you're not restricted to the 6 C's. We've also got these posters, which you're welcome to borrow. We've got plenty more than this. And Simply Do have recently launched an app as well, if you are feeling bold and you wanted to encourage your students to download that in an interactive session and have the whole thing digital. Before you go, I do want to stress again, in my opinion, this isn't limited to just business ideas, even though that's primarily how we as a team use it. It's about any idea that has practical constraints and needs to be thought about in a way that makes it sustainable. Charities need to be financially sustainable just as much as businesses. Research projects, workplace projects, all these things have very similar considerations, and it's quite a valuable tool. And it's also a great way for students to prepare for job interviews if they're looking to get a better understanding of the employer they're approaching. It can help them reflect and understand the business operations of the people they'll be speaking to. This is really an information slide which you're welcome to revisit after today. Hopefully you've had a flavour of how this can work for creative thinking. Some of the ideas were off the charts creative just now. It enhances commercial awareness, particularly among students who really don't get exposed to business models in any other context. It's a great icebreaker, so some of you who I presume you haven't met before today, we're having some fab conversations. Problem-solving sessions was a really great way to use this, and also evaluating ideas, some of which you've again experienced a little bit of today. If you're interested in doing more beyond today with either the Simply Your Ideas platform or the Concept Canvas or the Enterprise team, you can follow this link and create an account and see what the Concept Canvas looks like digitally. You can Simply Do Ideas have online resources as well, so PDFs and additional information that you can go to and download and use in teaching or just use for your own reflection. And lastly, as I said, the Enterprise and Startup team is part of Student Support Services. We're here for all students, whether it's in the curriculum, out of the curriculum. If you want to work with us to get more enterprise education in front of your student groups, we're available. So thank you so much for coming. I'm looking to see whether I've got any time left.
I think time
Probably
is against
not.
us, and
Yeah.
probably more importantly, tea is outside.
Wonderful.
Can I just invite you to thank Reece and Louise in a normal way for what a really interesting and practical session.